The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening mine.
Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, and awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased to present to you our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents His-Tory always repeats itself. But before he begins, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Now, let's receive Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, Vadi Maikum. We're going to discuss current events at the moment with the concept or clarity of nothing new to you. However, a reminder of your current condition and the necessary positions that we must take as a people to begin to redeem ourselves and our lost estate. And many of you already know that the politics of the world is based on the Romanus Pontifex generally, 1455, etc., from the popes of Rome, and also the doctrine of discovery. Now, with the gentrification of our communities here at the North Gate at North America, that many of our people have been arguing incorrectly as racism and prejudice, must be understood that that's old policy of the Pontifex and the doctrine of discovery operative under the Unum Sanctum United States, U.S., Unum Sanctum, U.S., United States Corporation, U.S., etc. operations, past and present. We have the benefit of many people beginning to awaken, and also the different political corporate nation states of the world beginning to recognize that they have themselves also been subdued by the Pontifex operations that was dedicated against the Aboriginal peoples of the world, and particularly the Moors of Northwestern Mexam, i.e. the Aboriginal people of North, Central, South America under colonial operations. Now, keep in mind that the East India Company, etc., is essentially the United States operations that you see today, and are essentially the corporate and business enforcement of the Roman Catholic Church bulls, i.e., and the dogma systems that go with it to support their breaches of all what you call treaty contracts around the world, etc., including the issue that you'll hear many of our people talk about with the POW prison systems operating at North America being the most populated of all of the political jurisdictions of the world. And it must be understood that those political operations are actually a continuation of the doctrine of discovery and the pontifex, etc., operations of unum sanctum. So keep in mind, so that many of you can become aware of where your energy directions should be placed, where your allegiances should be placed, etc. And as you all know, we've told you, for the last 10 to 15 years of the corporate United States, and of course, that's the cover sheet to their corporation. And keep in mind, the United States Corporation Company went bankrupt again, and that they settled in 20 and 21, which has much to do with their motivation of the biological warfare that they're waging on the people in the name of different instruments that they stick in people's arms, etc., to accelerate the genocide operations. And I'm going to read again from executive level operations of their private corporation, directed from the Pope of Rome, directed to the P2 Masons, and directed to the Skull and Bones operations, and directed to the Circle Church and Chancery, and exercised via the Bar Association of Los Angeles and California, and in general across the North American continent, etc., to exercise their bottomry instrumentality, etc. And they have been using it, particularly for the last 50 years or so, to actually rob other nation states, not just the Aboriginal peoples here at the North America, etc. And so you have the problems that we have told you about that would occur. We went over this many times at the House of Reawakening Minds, that the nations would stop trading with the hybrid Europeans, etc., the United States Corporation Company. And so a few years back, we discussed, when I had gone to Long Beach, California, as a matter of fact, I went through there because I had to do a lecture at a university in Sacramento. And we went to several areas at California, and that's Khalifa's land, that area. The matriarch of that area, who was one of the last major warriors to maintain any integrity of the Aboriginal tribes here at North America, which you'll see many murals with Khalifa, with her dreads, with her dread hair display, etc. And many people don't know that that's Khalifa, and that California is Khalifa's land, etc. area. Now, keep in mind, as we mentioned to you all, I think it was roughly around maybe 5 to 6 years ago, how the ships were piling up at the dock at Long Beach. And keep in mind, in that area, you have approximately roughly about 40% of all of the goods traded and also imported and exported that come into North America under the United States Corporation jurisdiction, operating at the Maghreb, i.e. Morocco, most extreme west, i.e. the North Gate, i.e. North America, Northwest Africa, etc. That constriction that would eventually take place because the nations would stop trading with them is manifesting in these last couple of years and becoming more apparent to many people, and many people who also thought that we were just talking out of our heads or making up things to alarm the people, and had not been preparing themselves for the continued unum sanctum wars that have been taking place. And I think people have forgotten that the hybrid Europeans are not Americans. They're hybrid Paleolith Europeans, etc., who are occupying North America under the corporate title United States Corporation Company, i.e. referred to as United States Corporate Company, and have been propagating themselves, as we have told you for years, pretending to be i.e., the organic land country, which they are not, absolutely not Americans, and they're not organic country. They're the corporate United States that has been posed as a country, and this is why we always reminded you all about the assassination. One of the major motivations of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln during that period of time, and the motivation of the P2 Masons, etc., perpetrating their private corporation as a country, implying civil jurisdiction on the land when actually they are operating from Fleet Street, England, etc., and from the Vatican. Now, I'm going to read again to remind you, because this is old hat, keep this in mind, but this is more for the people who are beginning to wake up, and so that they can vet the different people who have been claiming to instruct them, etc., or claiming to care about our people's affairs and welfare, etc., and in relationship to their obligations to tell the people the truth about the frauds of the operators of this private foreign bankrupt corporation and their subdivisional states of corporate entities, etc., who have been continuously pretending to be a nation state country, etc., and tied to the organic land, when in fact they were and still are a criminal operations of foreigners operating on the land, etc. And this is their official operative policies, official. And so when the concept with many of our people being distracted into the fake race argument, etc., and the color code systems and the caste systems disguised with the nom de guerre straw man entity operations, etc., they often forget that these operations and the poverty and the miseries that are placed upon the people are not circumstantial, but they are actually a continuation of things done in the past that are continued to be done. They just give them new names, the programming, they give them new names, and they'll list the problems or the symptoms of the problems as something different, but they are actually old. And so not being aware of the truth of the history, his story repeats itself and has been prevalent as we speak, and many people are suffering from it. However, we have to keep in mind that will, the point of will, the nature of the being, that humans are transceivers. And also you must keep this in mind that time is not linear. It's another subject matter, but keep that in mind while we're talking. Time is not linear. And this is a known factor by people around the world, but that is one of the secrets of nature. It's not really a secret, but that has been kept away from the masses as a general rule for the purpose of maintaining the corruption, i.e., of those who are mentioned in the book John 8:44, who have been pretending to be us for millennia and have been doing things around the world in our name, etc., and have gone unchallenged, etc. So let's read their policies so you can understand and comprehend every political and economic policy that is executed by persons claiming to be congressmen, senators for the United States, etc., corporation company, including the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the congressional, which is the legislative branch, etc., and the judicial branch would deal with all the court systems. And this is why we've been telling people to be aware of the fact that all of the judicial branches of the corporate commercial trade systems that they've been calling courts, etc., are run from Fleet Street, England. We've been telling you this for years, but it's important for you to Remember these things so that you don't repeat the mistakes that many of our people have been making by submitting themselves to these de facto jurisdictions, etc., and that they come together with people who of honor and do those things which are necessary to present to the world your rebuttal, and that you do not consent to the frauds and the demonology that has been practiced in the name of the political systems, whether you're claiming it to be Democrat or Republic Party. Both of those wings of the unum sanctum operations are the wings of the same demon bird. Keep that in mind. And keep in mind, over the years, we've always told you, as we've gone over different writs or reversion of a state statements that we've presented to you, and armaments of jurisdiction is to put into the ethers, etc., and before the nations of the world who have been trading with them, etc., that we are not a part of them and they're not a part of us, although our forefathers have some treaty with them, etc. Understand that those treaties have been breached, etc., and we remind you of these things so that you can start paying attention to them, not because we ever thought at all that they were going to honor anything. Problem has been that you didn't know that they had obligations that they have breached, because they've had you operating for generations under the Christian black codes and have set people among our own who have been training our people to make them think that black was an aboriginal identity and pedigree, which of course is a caste system. That means civil living mortuus, or dead in the view of the law. So I'm going to go into their general synopsis of their policies of operating all legislation, all political maneuverings, all economic foundational motivations. That means that they must do all de facto legislation that ultimately meets these ends. And I'll read just a part of it. And this is documented for their operations. All politicians have these documents, from the praetor, or do you know as the president of the corporation, down to the legislature and to the judicial branch. And because many of our people don't know the real politics, you'll see many people get together and have meetings and have conversations about them imprisoning our people and breaking our families up, etc. And they'll start talking racism and prejudice when they really need to know that these are actually unum sanctum doctrine of discovery operations, i.e., this is documented word for word, general synopsis of the political operations. So whenever our people are talking about congressmen and senators, etc., and looking at different things that they may present on the public forums, pretending to solve problems, know that among themselves, this is their guide point. This is the basis of their operation. Diversion summary. And this is on page 48 of Silent Weapons Executive Order 11490, with its military term referred to as King Alfred and Rex 84. Diversion summary. Media. Keep the adult public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Schools. Keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real law, and real history. Entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a 6th grade level. Work. Keep the public busy, 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 with no time to think back on the farm with the other animals. Consent, the primary victory. A silent weapons system operates upon data obtained from a docile public by legal but not always lawful force. Much information is made available to silent weapons systems programmers through the Internal Revenue Service, and you can see studies in the structure of the American economy for an IRS source list. And this information consists of the enforced delivery of well-organized data obtained in federal and state tax forms, collected, assembled, and submitted by slave labor, provided by taxpayers and employers. Furthermore, the number of such forms submitted to the IRS is a useful indicator for public consent, an important factor in strategic decision making. Other data sources are given in the short list of inputs. Consent coefficients, numerical feedback indicating victory status, psychological basis. When the government is able to collect tax and seize private property without just compensation, it is an indication that the public is ripe for surrender and is consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. A good and easily qualified or quantified indicator of harvest time is the number of public citizens who pay income tax despite an obvious lack of reciprocal or honest service. Page 49. Amplification energy sources. The next step in the process of designing an economic amplifier is discovering the energy sources. The energy sources which support any primitive economic system are, of course, a supply of raw materials and the consent of the people to labor and consequently assume a certain rank, a certain position, a certain level, or a class in the social structure, i.e., to provide labor at various levels in the pecking order. Each class, in guaranteeing its own level of income, controls the class immediately below it, hence preserves the class structure. And this provides stability and security, but also government from the top. As the time goes on and communications and education improve, the lower class element of the social labor structure become knowledgeable and envious of the good things that the upper class members have. They also begin to attain a knowledge of energy systems and the ability to enforce their rise through the class structure. This threatens the sovereignty of the elite. If the rise of the lower classes can be postponed long enough, the elite can achieve energy dominance and labor by consent no longer hold a position of an essential economic energy source. Until such energy dominance is absolutely established, the consent of the people to labor and let others handle their affairs must be taken into consideration. Since failure to do so could cause the people to interfere with the final transfer of energy sources to the control of the elite, it is essential to recognize that at this time, public consent is still an essential key to the release of energy in the process of economic amplification. And therefore, consent as an energy release mechanism will now be considered. Page 50. Logistics. Executive Order 11490. The successful application of a strategy requires a careful study of inputs, outputs, the strategy connecting the inputs and the outputs, and the available energy sources to fuel the strategy. And this study is called logistics. A logistical problem is studied at the elementary level first, and then levels of greater complexity are studied as a synthesis of elementary factors. And this means that a given system is analyzed, i.e., broken down into its subsystems, and these in turn are analyzed until by this process one arrives at the logistical atom of the individual. And this is where the process of synthesis properly begins, and at the time of the birth of the individual. And the artificial womb, next subject. From the time a person leaves the mother's womb, its every effort is directed toward building, maintaining, and withdrawing into artificial wombs, various sorts of substitute protective devices or shells. The objective of these artificial wombs is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, to provide a shelter for the evolutionary processes of growth and maturity, i.e., survival, to provide security for freedom, and to provide definitive protection for offensive activity. And this is equally true of both the general public and the elite. However, there's a definite difference in the way each of these classes go about the solution of problems. The political structure of a nation, i.e., dependency. The primary reason why the individual citizens of a country create a political structure is a subconscious wish or desire to perpetrate their own dependency relationship of childhood. Page 52. Page 51 is missing. So they hire politicians to face reality for them. Summary. The people hire the politicians so that the people can, 1, obtain security without managing it. 2, obtain action without thinking about it. 3, inflict theft, injury, and death upon others without having to contemplate either life or death. 4, avoid responsibility for their own intentions. 5, obtain the benefits of reality and of science without exercising or exerting themselves in the discipline of facing or learning either of these things. They give the politicians the power to create and manage a war machine to, 1, provide for the survival of the nation/womb. 2, prevent encroachment of anything upon the nation/womb. 3, destroy those citizens of their country who do not conform for the sake of stability of the nation/womb. Politicians hold many quasi-military jobs, and the lowest being that of police, which are soldiers. The attorneys and the CPAs next, who are spies and saboteurs, who are licensed, and the judges who shout the orders and run the closed union military shop for whatever the market will bear. The generals are industrialists. The presidential level of commander-in-chief is shared by the international bankers. And the people know that they have created this farce and have financed it with their own taxes, equaling consent. but they would rather knuckle under than be the hypocrite. And thus a nation becomes divided into two very distinct parts: a docile subnation and a political subnation. The political subnation remains attached to the docile subnation, tolerates it, and leeches its substance until it grows strong enough to detach itself and devour its parent. Systems analysis, page 53. In order to make meaningful, computerized economic decisions about war, the primary economic flywheel, it is necessary to assign concrete logistical values to each element of the war structure, personnel, and material alike. This process begins with a clear and candid description of the subsystems of such a structure. The draft as a military service, etc. Few efforts of human behavior modification are more remarkable or more effective than that of the social military instruction known as the draft. A primary purpose of a draft or other such institutions is to instill by intimidation in the young males of a social or of a society the uncritical conviction that the government is omnipotent. He is soon taught that a prayer is slow to reverse what a bullet can do in an instant. And thus a man trained in a religious environment for 18 years of his life can, by the instructions or the instrument of the government, be broken down and be purged of his fantasies and delusions in a matter of mere months. And once that conviction is instilled, all else becomes easy to instill. Even more interesting is the process by which a young man's parents, who purportedly love him, can be induced to send him off to war to this death. And although the scope of this work will not allow the matter to be expanded in full detail, nevertheless, a coarse overview will be possible and can serve to reveal those factors which must be included in some numerical form in a computer analysis of social war systems. We begin with the intensive definition of the draft. The draft, which is selective service, etc., is an institution of compulsory collective sacrifice and slavery devised by the middle-aged and the elderly for the purpose of pressing the youth and the young into doing the public dirty work. It further serves to make the youth as guilty as the elders, and thus making criticism of the elders by the youth less likely, which is generational stabilizers. It is marketed and sold to the public under the label of patriotic national service. Once a candid economic definition of the draft is achieved, that definition is used to outline the boundaries of a structure called a human value system, which in turn is translated into the terms of game theory. The value of such a slave laborer is given in a table of human values, a table broken down into categories by intellect, by experience, by post-service job demand, etc. And some of these categories are ordinary and can be tentatively evaluated in terms of the value of certain jobs for which a known fee exists. Some jobs are harder to value because they are unique to the demands of social subversion. For an extreme example, the value of a mother's instructions to her daughter, causing that daughter to put certain behavioral demands upon a future husband 10 or 15 years hence, thus by suppressing his resistance to a perversion of a government making it easier for a banking cartel to buy the state of New York in, say, 20 years. Such a problem leans heavily upon the observation and data of wartime espionage and many types of psychological testing. But crude mathematical models, algorithms, etc., can be devised, if not to predict, at least to predetermine these events with maximum certainty. And what does not exist by natural cooperation is thus enhanced by calculated compulsion. And human beings are machines, levers which may be grasped and turned. And there is little real difference between automating a society and automating a shoe factory. And these derived values are variable, and it is necessary to use certain tables of human values for computer analysis. And these values are given in true measure rather than US dollars, since the latter is unstable, being presently inflated beyond, and that part is missing, etc. This is what inflation is, and this is what's going on right now. And keep in mind, this is a synopsis, part of the synopsis of all of the political operations operating on the land and the civil and political jurisdiction on the land, which is not the United States of America. The United States of America is the corporate company operatives and their franchises who have been operating on our land, etc., pretending to be government. And this is how they've been, and why also, as the people have been waking up, why they've been putting them into prisons, i.e. called POW camps, and the people think that these people that are in prison, etc., are criminal, when actually those who run those prisons are actually criminals. And that's a fact.
Islam, Grand Sheik, you were speaking at the outset regarding how, His-Tory repeats itself. And
yes,
you were reading in the King Alfred plan
which is current events,
where there are plans for distraction and diversion.
Yes.
And just thinking this week, and brother, brother Kevin Berenger mentions the fact, and a lot of folks, like, while we're, say for instance, being diverted with NBA championships.
Entertainment is a very important part of the strategy for mental psychic attacks, to keep the people diverted while they're actually being genocided.
Right. So two major things, events were taking place in the past week. One of them was the World Economic Forum.
Yes.
And I think it was in Davos, Switzerland, and all of the things they brought and also there was a meeting that had something to do with the WHO, or the World Health Organization. And these are things that, this is the same thing that happens on the local level, when the fact that we are the distraction on the local level, and then they pass legislation or something. When you find out about it, it's already passed. Nobody's had a chance.
Keep in mind, all of those, even before a lot of those distraction operations take place, that the de facto legislation has already been prepared years before. They time it to release it. And absolutely. A lot of times people think that that those persons, that the board of directors for the Unum Sanctum operations, referred to as the U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate, etc., think that they're addressing things in a current state of affairs, etc., not knowing that these things, including the problems, were already planned with their directions, etc., beforehand. And that is the fact of the history. And this is why it's also important for people to be aware of the Roman bulls, which are actually the foundation for all of the contemporary world's politics, etc., against all the Aboriginal people, and particularly targeting the Maghreb, i.e. Maghreb al-Aqsa, which is Morocco, the extreme west, which is Northwest Africa, i.e., where is the land of all of the Bantu and Phoenicia tribes, i.e., of the Americas, and these are ancient. So don't get confused, because a lot of times people keep getting confused when they're talking about the treaties, etc., and their mind always refers to the territories under the guise of releasing a jurisdiction, i.e., at Morocco on the east side, etc., of Africa, which is a contemporary platform, etc. But the empire, i.e., is actually in the west, i.e., which is known as the Al Maghreb. And it is well known, it's not a secret, um, because most of the time they'll teach the people that the Maghreb means evening salat, for the ancient Sabian Moors, etc., what you call the Sabbath or the Sabbath, i.e., sometimes falsely referred to as Jew, which is a cover up for Sabbath history and culture, etc. And this is where that gray area or the misinformation that our people keep thinking that they're or been told that we're the real Jews, rather than saying that we are Saba, etc. And Jew was made up to cover up, and those who call themselves Jews are really among the fraudulent Khazarian operators that have created all these problems on the planet and are the real owners of the United States Corporation Company, etc., and are the major head operators of all of the major universities around the world, and the animal husbandry training that was set up in 1902 by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, etc., including all of your major universities where they're trained to enforce the unum sanctum operations, etc., which we're discussing right now. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that the Executive Order 11490 operating or officially executed and issued October the 19th of 1969, they think it is contemporary when it's actually unum sanctum operations. So history repeats itself.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is of note is that since the 60s, Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, has
for
been
the
United States Corporation. It has been a frontline force of everything that goes on, even to this most recent World Economic Forum at 99, which I question I question what keeps him, what has kept him.
You know what?
Well, yeah. Well, I know. We can't say it. But
let's put it this way. Let's know this. People need to comprehend that the motives for the hybrid Europeans doing their grave robbing at the Grand Canyon, that they hide from the people, which is also ancient Egypt, and Egypt, or he cooked up on the other side of the water, and why they went into Iraq, etc. And the first thing they did was rob the museums, etc. Is because they have been garnering and collecting both ancient technologies and ancient knowledge to keep themselves in power, although they always use it for what you'll call weaponized purposes, etc. And so people's concepts have been misguided in so much as they have put other Asiatics and other hybrid Moors, or what they call amalgamated Moors, in positions of power to tell you ancient African, ancient Hindustani, and say Indian, it's fiction, Hindustani history and ancient Moorish history, etc. And then to deceive the people into thinking that they're displaying important archaeological artifacts and history for the world, i.e., from Africa, North, Central, South, etc., the North Gate, East Gate, West Gate, South Gate, etc. And in fact, what they've really been doing have been saving or preserving and studying technologies and using that technology to actually control the world. And a lot of what people think is new technology is actually beyond ancient, etc., including the fact of them teaching the people about the fiction of the so-called slave diaspora from the east to the west, etc., which is total fiction, because we've been here for millions of years, not thousands, millions of years, and it's not a secret. However, it is that those truths are maintained in the secret societies and preserved for the elite. Now, one of the other things people must remember, and this is one of the reasons why over the years, I've always told the Moors to hold them to the obligations of the treaties, etc., which they never do, etc., which you already know why. And this is to get the people to start exercising their right of estate, and in doing so, they will discover that these people are de facto, etc. And in learning that, then that changes their state of mind. And in the change of their state of mind, they will no longer consent, etc., and thus enforce the law, the divine and natural law, etc., which undergirds the principles behind the organic constitution, which are ancient, which is the preservation of the estates of the ancient Asiatics and the tribes of North America, etc. And this is where and why we've always reminded them that while we were going through these processes over the years, that these were brain exercises, etc., and that a lot of things that we would be doing then, we wouldn't be doing later. And a lot of things we're doing now will not be doing later, but these are necessary for the wake up of the people, and also for them to begin to vet and to get from among themselves, the traitors among themselves, because they would know the rules or the principles that are supposed to be carried out in the name of government and international trade, etc., distinguished from their pedigree, i.e., or unincorporated self in social political order, i.e., which is not corporate or non-corporate. This is again why I reminded people why a lot of the traders among the Moors refused to admit that Noble Drew Ali set up a civic organization and it was unincorporated, etc. It was the activities of the different territorial Moors, etc., on the land. And this is why the designation Moorish American is established for the record to distinguish the Moors of the land from other Asiatic Moors from around the world, many of who have been in what you call treasonous operation or misprision operations with the hybrid Europeans who have been operating at North America under this guise of that corporation, company, etc., and have been pretending to have judicial and civil authority on the land. Again, and that's why we remind the people why Drew Ali did Act 1 of the Divine Constitution and bylaws for the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, because the fact of the matter is that the shakuns or the sheiks were supposed to take their places in the affairs of men and preserve the estate of the Moors, but instead they were making our people, guiding them into trying to be corporate members of the United States Corporation Company, etc., which actually is the re-enslavement that he warned them about. And then the consequence of that is this King Alfred operations. And so the history of the Unum Sanctum operations and the Romanus Pontifex Intercatera Divina, etc., are manifested today under King Alfred, and the policy has never changed. And by people looking at the different names or the different titles, they think that the history has changed, but actually it's repeating itself. And the war has never ended.
And then another point I would like to make is that I'm not sure, so I don't have receipts per se, y'all, but where I heard this from, but it makes a lot of sense. And you talked about going into, like the caves and so forth on Amexem and finding all of this ancient technology and so forth, but also that they have also been harvesting ancient DNA, and they have been using the DNA to do sort of what we would call Dr. Frankenstein type experimentation, and to bring back certain energies on a continue. When you talk about, there have been, His-Tory repeats itself. They've been, even, Mr. Barry Soetoro, aka Barack Hussein Obama, is alleged to be the say a DNA reincarnation of, I'm not sure if it's Tutankhamun or one of them. There's just a lot of things, and you see a lot of different ones over and over again. They keep
some of the light or the memory they're trying to restore, and they've been and most of the people have not been aware that the robotics is not a new technology.
Oh, no.
And they've been trying to, as fast as they can, perfect robotics now, so that they can run their factories with them. And this is why they have AI. As a matter of fact, this is one of the major reasons people don't even know why they encourage the people to put Alexa in their homes, and they talk to Alexa, not knowing all that data is being collected and put in robots, so that they can get rid of the people in their physical form. And this is also part of the reality of their missionary works. And this is another reason why, like you see over the years, Dr. G, that I limit my technical intercourse with them. That's why, because I already knew what they was doing. And a lot of people aren't aware of that data is being collected to actually turn around and use it against the people. And one of the things that they're doing as of recent is accelerating that. That's why it's necessary for them to start starving the people. And so this is why they're burning and destroying many of your major food processing plants across the country. And people need to do a little research on that and know that has a political motive of unum sanctum, carrying out unum sanctum, and it's being carried out under the Executive Order 11490. And this is why I've told people, 4 or 5 years ago, that Trump was assigned, and reminded people that I'm not defending Trump. I know that Trump was assigned, but keep in mind, they're battling over our estate. However, Trump's operations, and he's only a face, is exposing them or causing them to expose themselves. Meanwhile, our people should be coming together and restoring their estate. And at the same time, everything that they should be doing in the nature of their operation should be decolonization, not only just North America, but decolonization of the hybrid Europeans off the planet. Now, that's the real truth. And I know over the years, while I've said this many, many times, many people have tried to twist it into that I'm saying something different. But I've never hidden what my position is, and that has been my position. And I do know the rule. One of the major rules of the universe is the will, that the will must not be breached. And this is why even when the hybrid Europeans do different things to the people, that whether they're using movies or fairy tales or comic books or movies or entertainment or basketball, football, etc., they'll use different code systems to actually tell the people what they're going to do to them, because they know in the rule of divine law that it recognizes no person or station. And this is why some people don't understand or they don't comprehend why the hybrid European will give signals as to things that they're doing to the people before they do them, i.e., even if coded, tell the people the truth, etc., and then do wicked things to them. And that operation is based on their knowledge of divine law operations of cause and effect in Hermetic law, etc. This is again why all of those people that's in those power positions must become Masons and wear the crown of the sun of the Moorish nation, etc. And that is the collective Asiatics of the world, etc. and particularly of the North Gate and of Easter Island, etc., because they know that to violate universal law of will, or what you call free will, to interrupt, then they may, under that basis, cause out what you would call other helpers that are aware in the a greater universal planetary structure to come together to put them in check. And they don't want our people to know that our communications with others outside as is ancient, is nothing unusual. However, as like 10, 15 years ago, we used to always tell the people that we want to get the people to the point where they start rejecting the fraud, because if they don't, that message goes into the universal ether that the people are consenting to their enslavement. And so the people must be active enough that sends an energy into the ethereal world that they reject and don't want this. And that is actually the high level of spiritual prayer to both the energies of our ancestors and to all the others who have been dealing with us for years, etc., for centuries, not centuries, actually for millennia, for all time, etc. And but most people can't or unable to make those communications until or unless they are actually achieving the higher chambers of the mind and are aware of dimensions higher than four. And this is why people who know what's really going on here are usually attacking people who are operating from a fifth dimensional mind, etc. And for people who don't comprehend that the humans are transceivers, are not exactly comfortable when you find women and men who speak from their fifth dimensional mind, etc. They think they're out to lunch. However, it is necessary for those who comprehend what's really going on the planet to step up and start carrying out the principles that Drew Ali laid out for us. And this is why he also reminded the Moors that the half has not been told. And that is a checkpoint for us not to get caught into the religious dogma that has been placed before the people, which is actually a diversion, etc. And of course, much of that has been the problem that Drew Ali had when he set up the civic organization of the Moorish Temple of Science, etc. But we still get back into the unum sanctum operations and the infiltration into the Moorish divine and national movement, which caused the break off, which, this is where you have a lot of your subdivisional organizations that broke off, which includes Sweet Daddy Grace, Nation of Allah, which became Nation of Islam, Five Percenters, etc., Clarence, and all the rest of them. And all of that is still the Moorish movement, but the Moorish movement is really the movement for humanity of the Aboriginal peoples and tribes of the Maghreb, as well as the rest of the world. That's why Drew Ali says, I'm a universal prophet, and my philosophy will be universal. I came to you Moors, my people, because you need me the most. And this is because a lot of these Moors come from this concept that they own Noble Drew Ali, and that the principles that he presented to the people was limited to them. No, it's presented to humanity at large, etc. And by people not being aware of that, many of the mistakes and misjudgments that we have made in the past are continuously being made, and history has been repeating itself. And this is why over the years, certain principles that you've seen that how much information that we have that we discuss even privately, while I'm not tempted to be distracted in arguing a lot of other things, because I know that certain root things, if not addressed, the other stuff only remains in their symptom form. And the people don't know the root of a problem, they can't fix it, etc. And so the appeal is made to those who are capable and are aware of the workings of the chambers of the mind, etc., from the conscious to subconscious and the superconscious mind, and the collectivity of it and the activation of the mind chambers, etc., which allows them to be in their natural state of seeing and activating the pineal, etc., or the crown of the sun, and comprehending what that fez actually represents, etc., and would really activate it for the good of the people. And but however, you also know that there's been many corrupt people among us, and that has been a stagnation among the people. However, as we've talked for the last few years, the nations of the earth were going to stop trading with them, and so that would be that's causing and trust to cause a wake up for those who continue to pretend to be asleep, because keep in mind the responsibility of the restoration of the lost estate is that on every man, woman, and child, etc. They are obligated in nature to confess their own and to worship under their own vine and fig tree, etc. But people keep pretending that they don't get this information, they don't understand it, or they can't comprehend. And we already know that that's a false position, and we don't argue with people, but we also put this position out there redundantly for the people who are sincere so that they can begin to put such state of mind or activation of the will in place to actually save themselves and help save some of their families, because most of these people don't know that these traitors are actually going to sacrifice them in their, both physically and economically. And I think because people have been so used to the programming that the hybrids have presented to them, that they think that if they sell out, that they're going to get a benefit, not knowing that they're going to be sacrificed. Not only knowing that their children have been sacrificed all along the while anyway, and that many of them who thought that they're cooperating, i.e., with the WHO, etc., don't even know that they put nanobots in those things that they've been putting in there into their arms, and actually it's only a matter of time that some of them are going to be dropping, and you'll start seeing some of that before this year is out. And many of the people who have we've lost these last couple of years, that our people think died from some disease, actually died from the nanobots, and that's the truth. And that's King Alfred. It really absolutely is.
Well, you've been saying, ever since I've known you, for almost 12 years, and you've been speaking and saying things. And I'll be honest, when I first started hearing some of the things that you were sharing, when I first met you, I listened, but I kind of thought, no, because a lot of us had that naivety to believe that government meant protection, that government was synonymous with caring. And we know absolutely is absolutely in the opposite direction of that. They don't care. Someone asked me the other day about why. Sorry about the sirens, y'all. They asked me why would the government fires. My apologies. Why would the government spray chemtrails and so forth? And I use the analogy of the microcosm versus the macrocosm in that here we are spraying the ground for ants.
Not we.
No. Spraying the ground. Here's the analogy, right? We spray, if we see ants or roaches, here we are above them, and we're at the macrocosm spraying down to get rid of ants and roaches. They look at us the same way.
They never hit that.
That's exactly how. And so when they're spraying and putting out certain frequencies and so forth, it is just the same way we have learned to get rid of natural other life
and this is why, like we talked before, people need to know why, and we may go into that, and we've been talking about that here and there. We never want to get into the details,
right?
But people need to really do some research into the Roe versus Wade case and its tie or support tie to the Dred Scott case, and also the some of the suits that are taking place that we've been telling people in the last 7 or 8 years in world court, dealing with the human DNA in all of the burgers and meat and so-called meats that they've been selling in both the grocery stores and in hamburgers and in hamburger outlets, etc. That they've been actually feeding the people the lost children, the disappearing children, after they've been stealing their organs and other essence from them. And that's going on even now. And I'm trusting that enough honorable people among us are beginning to do some research and recognize that that was the real motive of the Roe versus Wade. It was actually part of the genocide product or projects, as well as the resource or raw material product of human trafficking, which they thought was just meant labor. But the human trafficking operations is not limited to labor. It's actually limited, it's actually inclusive, and most importantly, for them to both the usury and raw material operations of the actual physical human body, etc. And preferred was and is um, children from from birth to around 12 years old, and that's been going on for millennia, and people haven't known about that. That will come out too, and many women out of ignorance thinking that quote unquote, as they have been taught to call them the government. They're not your government. Were helping or caring about women's right to their body when actually women were contributing to the cannibalism of their own offspring, and taking their children, getting these beautiful little cute little baskets and little toys at burger joints to actually eat their own children.
But the other thing is, Grand Sheik, is that we, as the women, and I'm talking about in general at the beginning, made the agreement to become, I call starships, to bring in new living vessels, to be the vessels to bring in new life. So when a woman says she's, in my opinion, when she's exercising her right to choose, she's breaching the agreement to bring life in. Who gives us the right to choose?
Is a cover statement,
right? Because we don't have the right
sympathetic.
We don't have the right to choose who gets to come in, who doesn't.
You have no right to murder,
right? But who comes in and who does not.
Yeah.
And so and then we never think in terms of our own self. What if the vessel that we were coming in decided to abort the mission?
Training. That goes into the animal husbandry training that they talk about in here from childhood. And so they're trained under animal husbandry and are just simply producing children as farm animals. Now, it's not that that's not knowable. It certainly is knowable. I think over the years they have played the sympathy game with women to make them go into the state of mind of denial that they've been participating in the genocide of their own people. And then, of course, they cover that up with the fakery of so-called religious belief participation in the masochistic and sadistic, what you call them, pilfery clubs of the priesthood that they've been calling the Circle Church and Chancery, and pretending it belongs to Jesus and Allah and stuff like that. This is why a lot of them in their heart knew it anyway. And this is why very often when you tell the truth about the history, people who claim to be religious get very sensitive, upset, and then their horns start coming out, and you start seeing them wishing evil on people who see them for who they really are. And the real deal is that they've been sacrificing children in the name of their lords and demigods for centuries. And they thought no one would see them. And they're angry when people know what they're really about or even hint or speak to it. But because they are part of the network of the Circle Church and Chancery, and the Lords of London, etc., and they have had the capacity or the ability through the media and through their churches, etc., to control the mindset of the people. All they need to do and have been doing is calling these people of these so-called religious orders together to attack anyone who goes against the corporate nation / room of the Satanists, etc. And this is the root of the visionary operations or the divide and conquer operations that they've been dealing with on the people for actually centuries now. And hopefully, for the few who have any integrity, as we've talked about, left at all, that they'll come together and try to bring some peace and integrity back to Midgard while there's some time. But it is clearly apparent and inevitable that by virtue of cause and effect, and by virtue of those things which have been set into motion already, that can't be stopped because it has to balance out, that many of the people are going to be removed from the planet anyway. Unfortunately, many of the people want to be removed who thought that they were going along with their compromise and thought that the Romans were going to give them a favor, etc., or give them some part of the spoils, etc., and didn't suspect that they would be sacrificed too. However, the different nation states around the world have come to that realization quite a couple of years ago. And this is why we told people, about 7 or 8 years ago, that they need to recognize what the so-called BRICS nations, what that really means. They're looking at it, I think, often just from a political perspective of trade, and shipping, etc., and not knowing that the people have come to the conclusion and recognize that the unum sanctum operations that was instituted against the Moors, i.e., Northwest, Central, Southwest Africa, Old, Omexum, etc., that we, being the primary target, were to be the only sacrifice. And then they discover that they were going to be sacrificed too after they've been used, the same way they sacrificed Geronimo and used his bones and skull and bones symbol, etc. After he told many of the tribes here, to not fight and resist the hybrid Europeans, and then after they used him up, just like a lot of your so-called civil rights marching leader guys, then they took his weapon and threw him in jail. And now they use his bones symbolically, and skull and bones, etc. And that's a platform they use for world conquest, etc. And so the old history that people think is old history is actually current events. And of course, when you know that time is not linear, you also know that they know and that they have been aware of the ancient ones here and on the other side of the water, that what they call time travel is no new thing. And that dimensional looping or jumpers is no new thing. It's just that they've been doing as much as they can to try to figure out how to do some of the ancient technology. And I present that they have found some of the methodologies, and they think that they found all the keys. And so now they think they don't need the people and they're going to kill them off. That's the stage that we're at right now.
Right.
They're convinced that they found enough of the ancient secrets of ancient Hikupta that now they can conquer the planet, not just the different nation states, but also the planet, and then eliminate all the Aboriginal people, and particularly the old people of the ancient Lemurian, Moabite, Canaanite blood, etc., the true Aboriginal peoples of the world, etc., and the true pedigree heirs of the planet, which is really what the politics is really right now. And this is why they've been filling the prisons with us, and also why they've been accelerating in the last 20 years the women's prisons, etc., because it's a genocide operations of unum sanctum. So now again, the people must know that that superior to the operations of the unum sanctum and doctrine of discovery exercises, that while they are indeed formidable and while they're indeed hard, etc., and merciless, that the people are not without power. The people have forgotten that the will is a divine energy, and that in spite of it all, the dark priesthood need the consent or the will of the people, even that they may trick them, etc., to exercise that will. And this is the reason why over the years that we have been getting the people to start writing writs, arrogance of jurisdiction, quo warrantos, etc., which puts into the energy of the ethers that the people do not consent. And at the same time, the instrumentality kills the bond systems in their paper forms of bottomry instruments that have been used for trade between nations that constitute the bond and the treasury note systems that they've been trading in the SWIFT systems, etc. However, in spite of the traitors among our people who have not maintained integrity to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, the nations of the world have now begun to band together and have stopped or interrupted the trade, etc., with the United States Corporation Company owners and operators. And of course, they went bankrupt, and they settled in 2021. And much of these biological operations that you see taking place now is them trying a last ditch effort to kill off as many people as possible using pharmaceuticals and using inflation, which is a system of robbery through governmental systems of the resources of the people, etc. And so history repeats itself. But people need to know. So when we're talking now, King Alfred Rex 84 operations technical manual of the political platform of the articles of incorporation of the United States Corporation Company, etc., that system is being broken by the unity of nations. So above and beyond that, it is important for all the Moorish tribes, etc., of the Maghreb to come together and to say no, not just in a verbal sense, but actually in a sense of survival operations of unity. And like we've always said, years ago, Dr. G, and you remember I said these Moors are going to come together not because it's a lack of information or a lack of men and women who are been sacrificing to try to do the best they can to get the truth to them. They're going to come together out of pain. And the pain is here. And we're just reminding them that it's just to encourage you to be honorable and to be sincere. Because this stuff is nothing we haven't told you decades before. It's not new. It's not new news, and it's not new. In other words, this is not a new lecture or news conversation that we've had. This just remind you that we've told you already. Hopefully that you will apply this information to inspire you to use your will to not consent to the operations of the Unum Sanctum, i.e. the U.S. operations, which corporately is dead. Now your issue is to come together and bury the dead.
The interesting thing, I'm not sure if it was, I was listening to Dane Calloway or someone, but opened my eyes to a deeper meaning of transportation and had me, made me go and dig into DOT, Department of Transportation. What is this real mission? Because when you think about DOT, you think about highways and byways like that, roads and so forth. So
trafficking.
So when I went to look at looked at their priority, there's a great big thing where the priority open recommendations they did to the Department of Health and Human Services. And I'm like, what would DOT, Department of Transportation, have to do with health and human services? So I'm looking up what I heard discussed about transportation as it's called transportation theory. And so when you look at transportation theory, which I think we have been victimized by, let me just share this if you don't mind. It's a narrative transportation theory proposes that when people lose themselves in a story or a narrative, their attitudes and intentions change to reflect that story. The mental state of narrative transportation can explain the persuasive effect of stories on people who may experience narrative transportation when certain contextual and personal preconditions are met. As the whoever did the study, as they elaborate further, narrative transportation occurs whenever the story receiver experiences a feeling of entering a world evoked by the narrative because of empathy for the story, characters, and imagination of the story plot. That is what we've been a victim of, the narrative transportation theory. And it seems like the DOT doesn't just deal with roads and highways and trucks.
Even with them tearing our families out, right?
Because they got a health and human services component in the DOT.
Remember, health, people think that when they say health, they think that they're meaning uplifting health. They don't think that they mean that they're attacking health.
Absolutely.
So the stabilities of families, right, is health. The stability of the mind is health.
Right.
The things that we shared with you, which is their policy, deals with health and human services, not in the concept that you think it does. It deals with the destruction of human health. Absolutely. And they use these services and agencies to carry it out under the guise of federal government, under the guise of state government. And so people keep thinking that these platforms are what you call treaty constitutional platforms. They're not constitutional or treaty platforms. They're unum sanctum platforms, Roman bulla platforms, pretended or perpetrated as omnipotent governmental services. There's actually a war machine.
You read in Rex 84 about sending our sons off to war.
That's what it's for. That's what it's for.
If they will willingly send their sons, off to something that the intention on the other end is
to injure people that have never done anything to them.
Absolutely.
Right? And that are extended family of other, what you call tribes and nations, which destabilizes the whole, which is the basis of their unum sanctum operations, i.e. schism operations, which they refer to militarily, which is commonly known as divide and conquer. And the deal of it is that they haven't even changed the pattern. They've done it redundantly over and over again. The problem that you have is that people among our own take payoffs and think that Rome is going to give them some benefit, and so they help Rome with their efforts of infiltrating all organizations and undermining all organizations while pretending to be supportive. And this is why over the years I've always said to you, Dr. J, even with a lot of people that have come around us, I always knew that that we have people among that us were trying to undermine what we were doing. But we also know that in doing so, that they also have to pretend. And in pretending, they also bring up subject matter that brings us to the minds of the people. And this is why over the years, like some people have always approached me and said, why did you let certain people use your material and rob your material and make finance off of your material? And use stuff that you've given them and sell it to the people at extorted courses and everything. I said, because they're bringing upon the people a cognizance of their estate. And in due time, the people will recognize that these people are what? Are con artists. They would expose themselves. But in thinking they're robbing, they would actually be helping to put the cause of the nativity of the people and the estate of the people on the record and on tongues and the mouths of the people. And in due time, the people will begin to recognize that these issues keep being brought up. What's this Moorish thing? What's this Moorish thing? But in doing so, they will learn both the history, they learn jurisprudence, they learn of the King Alfred operations, and they will learn that it's been going on for centuries, etc. And then they would stop willingly participating in supporting the agencies, and thus, when their will changes, the condition change, etc. It's not in support of the agencies. is that you put that before them so they can start looking at them and become cognizant that they're not their government, and nor is a lot of these people they thought that was, supportive of the principles that Noble Drew Ali presented for the restoration of the state, that they were actually his enemies. But until you bring these things before them and they start examining these things, they wouldn't get it. As a matter of fact, most of them think it had nothing to do with them, but it's been affecting everybody around the planet.
And back to this transportation theory, one thing comes to mind is the so-called, the Bible is a big transportation, if you will. It transports people back into a narrative.
In the mind.
Because,
yes, man. That's why Drawley told him, man is mind. And keep in mind, like the people in all your secret societies, for the most part, know that there were actually 777 books to the Bible. And so they brought it down to the 66, didn't they?
66, yeah.
So look at 777. That's why years ago, when, I first got our tags, my tag was 777. But that was a code. But then that's like 91, 92, 93.
Wasn't it Prince or somebody had a song where it said 777 93 11?
Oh, yeah.
What's your number or something like that? You never know whether there was codes in some of the stuff.
But this is what I always knew, Dr. J, that as long as you are consistent, you try to deal with the keys to the traps, etc., that the hybrids have put in place, that in due time it would stimulate other people who were asleep, who some of them don't even know who they are, that they would wake up and then they start doing their job or applying their assignment. That's why I've also told people over the years, and that a lot of them people get mad when I keep telling them that Allah is a feminine name, because Allah is all universal law. So that's the cosmic mother.
It's like they change everything, so they've made it,
they twisted in order to corrupt,
masculine, patriarchal, the way divine, feminine.
So if you control the womb, so doesn't this deal with the marriage certificate and everything? The control of the womb, and people think it means some kind of divine covenant with the divine God of the universe, and it's actually a covenant with Popes of Rome, and that is an agreement to sacrifice their children to the corporate state, which is what the birth certificate becomes. But until you start presenting these things to the people, they won't look at them and recognize the effect that it has on their lives. They think it has nothing to do with them. And so they think that Moors who are writing writs to counter these things are agreeing with the corporate government. No, we're rejecting. We're making them counter us and thereby exposing themselves. And they've done a good job of doing that. Now the problem Moors got to do is start cleaning up their own act.
It's so much, and it's so. And one of the biggest things that I see is an unwillingness to expand, an unwillingness to let go of that which was previously held to be the ultimate and sacred truth. Absolutely, and with that unwillingness comes, and that's why we can't move forward.
But because we are.
Well, we're moving, but we're not. What I'm saying, everybody's not moving together because people are stuck.
Let's look at this. Now, let's look at this. What is the truth about this? Those who have ears to hear will hear.
We'll hear.
Right? Those who have eyes to see will see. What does that mean? Those who will, let them hear and see. That means the call is out divinely to the true blood. And the true blood will hear. And those who've been fronting will reject. So you don't preoccupy trying to convince them, because most of them already knew this. The deal of it is, remember this, more people know this information than most people would ever imagine do. As a matter of fact, if anybody operating at Midgard has any power position, corporately or in the churches, the big mosques and the big synagogues and the big organizations, etc., whether man or woman, the matrons of those churches are Eastern Stars, the Orders of American Revolution, etc. And then pastors and bishops and priests are Masons, etc. Got a Moorish fez in secret and turn around and publicly refer to these people as black and people of color, knowing that is a signal for the dead. And they've been feeding off of them. Now that is the truth. While in secret, they have what? Bibles with white covers which signify purity in God. That's what it's a signal. It's a sigil. All right. And so they see it and don't even know what they're looking at. Then they take oaths to Rome. Just like when you look at remember when we talked years ago around 2013, we talked about the motu proprio over at the house. Mm-hmm. And we issued motu proprio to the people to look and to examine, and we discussed that. And around that time, I started telling the people that soon they're going to stop trading with them.
You did.
That's when I first started putting those signals out, right? And then the motu proprio, and then they breached that, which they're always going to do. And then Obama started showing the Moorish flag and started talking about the treaties, etc., right? Or Barack Obama. Then he went to the Alhambra. Michelle went to the Alhambra. He went to Egypt and talked about the history at North America, didn't he? And started signifying about the Constitution, etc., didn't he? And the treaty, right?
Right.
And then they cropped out the Admiralty trading amity and trading banner, which is the stars and stripes, and only showed the Moroccan star with the sign of man in it, or the star of man, which is actually the star of Venus. But keep in mind, we have both the hex alpha and the star of Venus, and also a solid red flag according to the dynasty and according to the operations. All of those flags are ours, including the crescent and the star. And so he's showing current event of politics after the operations of the splitting of the Maghreb between what they would call the Spanish or the French and the British, etc. And so this is where you get them for these last 50 years or more, arguing over the territories at the Maghreb or Morocco and the U.S. corporation operations at North America, and the perpetration on the people with the media, making them think that the United States was the aggregate organic land, and not telling the people here who they've been abusing under the straw man of the 14th Amendment that they are actually the heirs of the world's largest estate. And of course, now you're going into the issue of the real mission of Drew Ali, and also begin to recognize how many people around have absolutely misrepresented Drew Ali, and why they get angry over the years when I've always told the truth about the fact that he set up a civic organization, and why they keep talking about that religious affidavit 1928, which is on the back of that questionnaire that you see, and then lie and say that he did that religious affidavit in 1913, and they're lying on him and lying on the politics. But you already know the COINTELPRO operations. This has never been a secret, and you already know all of that is King Alfred, because they didn't hide it. It's not that it's not there. Is that people had the information, kept hiding it, and then having our people march around on their own land, asking de facto operators of the Circle Church and Chancery and their vampire operatives of the bar, etc., to give them rights, etc., which could never be given, because all their job was ever to do was to steal your rights, which are divine and is in nature, cannot be given, it can only be claimed. And this is back to, over the years where we've been arguing with the people, the nature of reversion of a state, that they themselves must declare heirship. And so their nativity, which is politically represented symbolically with the nationalization, etc. But if it ain't in the heart, it ain't in the real. However, by doing that, what it does and what it has done, it has interrupted the bottomry instruments that have been traded on the stock market, which is why we've done the paperwork. And a lot of people keep misrepresenting the paperwork, if you get the whole point. However, in reality, what it is throwing a wrench in the gears of the bodily instruments of trade. And so now the nations of the earth are not accepting their bonds nor the birth certificates for trade anymore, are they? So now the trade markets, the admiralty trade markets of the seas has stopped, hasn't it? And even if they started it, the point of it is the damage is done. Meanwhile, it's important for our people to come together with the best minds that they have to start solving some of these problems, because if they don't, we're going to suffer the consequences. And guess what? The physical life cannot be maintained if they don't start fixing stuff.
And another thing, Sister Karima, who was on the show about a month and a half ago, she does the cards, and she was sharing with me the other day, like it has nothing to do with skin complexion like people think. And she was telling me about a client of hers who is probably from North Africa, and was told or shared with her that, and she said as dark as us, but was told that when they came here that they are to say that they are white. To check because of status.
Because they are.
They are, but I'm saying while here we are labeled and branded as Negro, Black.
The mental midgetry is this.
Right.
And we've taught this to the people for years. That's why we, every once in a while we'll go into the harsh Greeley information, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do that to bring the people back up to snuff. The Whiggamore Party, the conscience Whigs and the Cotton Whigs. Right, and the meetings that they had 1854 to 1863, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Illinois, Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan oath, when the hybrid Europeans took on the status title white as a political form. And so since the 1854, that's when it became more popular politically for the white status to be applied to the hybrid European invaders, the foreigners, etc. So, and then our people, being under the mind control, started thinking that that's a pedigree or bloodline indicator. It's a status indicator, and it's part of the attack on their estate. And they don't know that they themselves are white people. And this is again why we go every once in a while. We, like years ago, like say 35, 40 years ago, the operations of the Order of the Great Seal, one of the first things we would do is encourage the scholars to get Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary of Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence, etc. And as far as investment, from 1 to the 4th edition, because 5th on out, they started watering it down. And this is why we went into this. As a matter of fact, let's bring this to 4, because this is very important for the people to know. This is 4th edition, Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, right? And people need to know that that the free or the white people is a status, and keep in mind all of their so-called Negro and Black leaders who are Masons knew this and know this all the time. They get it in Masonry, and then they wear the crown of the sun. That's why you see, whether you see the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia, you'll see Asiatics and you see Europeans in their different clubs, right? And you see them wearing turbans and feathers, won't you? And you see them wearing turbans with the jewels symbolizing the pineal with feathers, right? With raven feathers, or peacock feathers, or aquila feathers, which you call eagle feathers, right? Symbolizing all the Moorish tribes of the Maghreb. And they're wearing the crown of the sun, which they call in Masonic orders Tierra Sol, which means crown of the sun, i.e., which is the Fez, right? Founders of the eternal zodiac, right? And then they call themselves white people. Now, this is Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, page 792, 4th edition. And it also say, quote unquote, free white persons. Free white persons referred to in the Naturalization Act as amended by the Act of July the 14th, 1870. Write that date down so y'all can do research and deal with the Naturalization Act and distinguish from nationalization. Don't get it twisted. Naturalization. Free white persons referred to in the Naturalization Act as amended by Act July the 14th, 1870 has meaning naturally given to it when first used in one statute 103C3, meaning all persons belonging to the European races, then commonly counted as white, and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have immigrated. Free white persons include all European Jews, more or less intermixed with persons of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descent. Free white persons includes Magyars, Lapps and Finns, and the Basques, and the Albanians. Free white persons includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, and the mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenicians, and North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. Free white persons does not mean Caucasian race. Free white persons does not mean Aryan race. Free white persons does not mean Indo-European races, nor the mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, and Mongolian people who inhabit Persia. A Syrian of Asiatic birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person, ex parte Shahid, DCSC 205 F 812 813, United States versus Cardozoan, DC, or Oregon CF, second edition, 919, etc., and gives you multiple other law cases. And so you can see the North Africans and other people that come to North America, etc., are all free white people because they're nationals. Persons who cannot be white people are Christian property, i.e., people of color, or slaves, or people held to servitude, or in the caste system, and thus the nom de guerre system or the 14th Amendment person, i.e., if you see someone, and our people who don't understand it keep looking at the color code system. Oh, they're darker than me. Oh, they're lighter than me. Or I got a light-skinned black girlfriend, and I wear her a light-skinned black leather coat, and these people think it's real, and they have no idea it's a caste system. Problem that you have with that is that their so-called leader guys, all these grand sheiks, grand governors, and rabbis, and all these big-time bishops and big-time evangelist preachers, all Masons, got a Moorish fez in secret. All their lodges got Moorish names. Know that these people are Moors. Know that North America is Maghreb al-Aqsa, etc., Morocco, the most extreme west, etc., with all the Moorish tribes that are ancient here, not modern. They didn't come on those ships. They ain't been here a couple thousand years. They've been here from the beginning, before the oceans even parted, etc. That's why every once in a while we got to even tell them about the cocoa plate shift, etc. I.e., all of us are free white people until European hybrid colonial operations. That's a fact. 1854, 1863, Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan oath of operations, meeting of convention, i.e. with the Whiggamore Party, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is when they officially, in their political status, started altering records and begin to call themselves white people, i.e., which means the sovereign rulers of the land, etc., stealing your estate, and then start promoting the black codes on our people, and then putting people that look like us among us to teach our people that they were people of color and black, and that it represent the civilizers of the earth and the great African kings and queens, etc., when actually the people were consenting to a caste system that made them civil liter mortus, etc. And of course, Drew Ali countered that with the nationalization of the people, etc. And that's why it's important for the people to know the real missionary work of the civic organization of the old Canaanite temple. That's the truth. So it's not a secret, never been a secret, but you'll see the so-called Negro and black leaders who themselves got this information stay away from that, don't they? Because they want our people to think that the hybrid European is the white man and not know that the people themselves are the white people, i.e. the sovereigns of the land. It's a status. However, the white buffaloes come. People should have recognized that a long time ago.
There's a question. Someone asked about the black sun in Ukraine. I was see something. White doesn't mean Aryan either, no. Just looking to see if there's any question.
I can't understand what
No, I'm just trying to find any questions. We're almost at the end of this session.
So anyway, we're at a point now that while the people are in this they're not as static as they were, but a semi-static state, people need to be aware of the fact that the institutions that they have built all their trust in are collapsing and have collapsed, which we've been telling them.
Right.
And so, they're going to have to, if they're going to survive, they're going to have to start getting together with positive people. They're going to start thinking positive. They're going to not accept the fear tactics or the biowarfare instrumentalities perpetrated on humanity by the hybrids, etc., and do that which is harmonically right with nature, reattach themselves to late nature, and work the storm out. And for the ones that are left, we'll come together and start rebuilding Midgard, because that's the charge that's put on you anyway, which we've been telling you before. And it's sort of like, like Dr. G,
yes.
What can we do but say that we've been redundant with this argument? But the deal of it is, it's almost like we can talk now to more encourage some people who are waking up, but it's like the work has been done. And the platform, the demon platform is dead. The deal of it is people don't know that the demon is dead. And what they need to do is shed their lower selves. Some of them have been doing their shadow work and recognize this information. Some have not been doing their shadow work and are going to be finding themselves in a very uncomfortable position, unfortunately. But it's also, you willed it to be too, also.
Okay. Canaanland Moors wants to know, why am I talking as if I do not know about who? Mustafa Hefni. I just responded to you because I don't know. So I don't even know who you're talking about. So let me make that perfectly clear. I don't even know who you're talking about. So moving on. Question. Let me see if there's any question, last question or anything before we go off.
Anyway, Dr. J, so let's look at this. Remember when a couple of years ago, we told people to start going within, etc. Because remember, and reminded them that what they thought was money is not money.
Mm-hmm.
And stop calling it money.
Yes.
And comprehend that you're going to have to go back to other principles and operations of barter to support each other. Because, like we told you before, they're going to be stealing those accounts that you thought was yours.
Yeah, you did.
They're going to be doing a lot of things to you. And so, if you've been listening, some of you have been preparing yourselves accordingly, and those who haven't, you're just going to have to deal with the consequence of your own choices. But remember, those who had an ear would hear, and those who have eyes to see, see. Those who chose not to, you have a right to all your rewards. Anyway, thank you all for coming here and sharing the evening with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds, etc. Hopefully, for the few of you who are late in your awakening, get with people who have the guts and the integrity to tell the truth, to start fixing these things, because you're going to need as much truth as you can get, because the institutions have already started their series of collapse. And so if you've been depending on the institutions that you thought were government, you're going to find yourself in a not comfortable position, because when you go seeking support from them, you're going to find that not only will they not be there for you, they will simply use you as food, which is what they saw you as in the first place. So you will be eagerly, how do you say, expelled, executed, extinguished, expunged, and expired.
What is that book you wrote? Is it Evolve or Become Fertilizer?
That's what that was all about. Was that 19, 20 years ago around the corner?
Yeah. Evolve, Become Fertilizer.
In other words, is, we much of our earlier conversations were trying to prepare our people for what's already here. So it's almost like, to have these kind of conversations, like it's like talking about, get an umbrella. Now we're in the storm. It ain't coming, it's here. Anyway, have a grand evening and support the House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds is here to support you, etc. And also would remind many of you who don't waste the fiat that you have left. Get a few pieces of silver. Start doing things to secure your body. Take responsibility for your own health, etc. Anyway, have a grand evening.
Thank you, Grand Sheik. Before we go, just want to say, let our audience know that our first Up Close and Personal for 2022 is coming up. All of those who will participate, in addition to you and myself, we're still lining up, but we're doing a whole weekend this time, August 20, what is it, 25th through,
what did you say?
It's 24th, 25th, and 26th, I believe. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, August. We'll be putting information out soon, but we are doing a 3-day event. The first day is sort of a meet and greet on that Friday. We're doing the thing what we did last year with you and other speakers on Saturday all day. And then on Sunday, Dr. Botanica, Mother Kai, Brother Dave, myself, and others are doing a holistic health fair with a lot of. And
that's going to be great.
And we have a fundraising raffle coming up where you can win over 3,000 notes worth of holistic products, sleep and products, and other products that we have. So we're going to give you an opportunity to your tickets to the event. We'll get you a raffle ticket. And if you can't come to the event, we'll be able to purchase a ticket separately, and you'll get your item whether or not you're here or not, if you're picked on that day. So we'll be having more information. Just kind of save the date, August 24th, 25th, and 26th, I believe that is. 24th, 25th, 26th, and plan to be with us for a whole weekend of up close and personal and health and wholeness and wellness and all of those wonderful things. We look forward to seeing you this year. And last but not least, we are Some of you have asked for it, and Grand Sheik will be back on Friday, June 17th.
Yes.
It'll be a 3-hour, will be just for this particular 3 hours or as long as it goes. Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, and Rod Hayes together on June 17th, and they're going to let you in on I guess their conversation. So you're going to want to mark your calendar for June 17th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, Rod Hayes, and we'll see what comes out of that. Maybe we can, get your questions. I hope to, if there are any questions. I mean, will you guys be answering any questions, or we'll just be eavesdropping on the conversation?
That'd be great.
We'll see. Well, we'll see. Thank you so much for tuning in, y'all. We know, we love y'all, and we appreciate you. Need to be your library. Okay. We appreciate you. Tuning in. Tuning in. And hey, we'll be back. I'll be back on Tuesday. Office hours with Dr. G. Yeah. With Kevin Behringer of Real Nagas.
All right.
Get the update of what's going on. Kevin always has some bright insights about what's current and so forth. So Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Kevin, my buddy Kevin will be here. And then, like I said, the 17th, I'm really, 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 really looking forward to you and Rod on the same platform and
getting some work done.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you all so much. We're getting ready to get out of here. It's Friday, or it's Holy Day.
Great evening.
Yes, and so we're going, and appreciate your tuning in and just being here, here.
Being patient and having just a casual conversation.
Absolutely, we going out
on a level of ascended reality.
Absolutely. We appreciate you, and hey, if you haven't got your chokeberry, we got it in stock.
Dr. G, inviting you to get your Chokeberry Plus today. It is that amazing berry, high in antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, antiviral properties. It supports and balances the blood pressure, the blood sugar, weight, and cholesterol. Yes, you can get a 2-month supply today by texting CB3L to 302-345-0500. That's CB3L to 302-345-0500. And get on the path to wellness today. You'll be glad you did.
Deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, reawakening mind. Come to know and find out what is true. Yes, and you'll know what's in store.